Now, to recap everything that we just learned in this lesson, I'll go through some of the key points and some of the key concepts that we just learned. So the first thing we learned was what full stack web development actually is and how that's different from front end web development, which is the focus of this Coding 101 course. We then learned how to use the Google Inspector tool, as well as the console within that tool, and run JavaScript programs through that console. We learned about the alert and the prompt functions to talk to or communicate with the user and get input from that user. We learned how to declare variables, store information in those variables, and then retrieve the information that we stored in those variables later on to use in our program. We learned about three different data types: strings, integers, and floats. We also learned about the difference between summing two integers and concatenating two strings that look like integers, as well as the parse int method, which will allow you to take a string and turn it into an integer. We then learned about if then else statements, which give the program some basic logic. We also learned about random numbers and the math.random and the math.floor functions that allow you to use random numbers in a very variable type of way so that you can have the random numbers do whatever it is that you want to do. We also learned about comments and their usefulness in terms of how to describe what it is that you're doing in your code, as well as potentially commenting out code so that you can debug or hide code that you don't want to be displayed or to run. And then finally, we learned a little bit about how to use Microsoft Visual Studio Code and how to run programs locally. Now that we've learned all this, we're going to give you some homework before we move on to the next lesson. The first program is a days alive calculator. You're going to ask the user what year they were born in, and then you're going to tell the user how many days they've been alive for. The second program is a temperature converter. You're going to ask the user to enter a temperature in either Celsius or Fahrenheit, and then convert to either the Celsius or the Fahrenheit, depending on what they put in. And the last project is just a vowel program. You're going to ask the user to type in a letter, and then you're going to tell the user whether or not it's a vowel. Before you move on to the next lesson, it's important to do all these homework assignments by yourself and then submit them to Uprise University to make sure that you're doing everything correctly and that you've learned all the key concepts before you go on to the next lesson. We look forward to seeing you in lesson 2 of the Coding 101 course.